Emotional intelligence is naturally within each one of us, and at the same time, it's a skill set that I think most people have to intentionally build because we're just not taught emotional intelligence in this culture, in school, in our families, or anything like that. So what it's really about is identifying and understanding and managing our emotions to create the best possible outcomes for ourselves and really everyone around us. So to start with emotional intelligence, if we don't have any framework for it, is we can just consciously identify our emotions in every moment, and that'll give us the awareness of how we're showing up in the world. And with practice, we can start to build the skill of identifying our emotions in real time. And it's super valuable because it allows anyone who has this skill to become a better decision maker, to be better at conflict resolution, and really better at managing all the relationships in their life. And in my experience, emotional intelligence is a key factor in the level of success that I feel like I can attain in my personal and professional life. Psychologists say that 5% of our mind is operating at the conscious level and 95% is operating at a subconscious level. That's 95% is an unbelievably massive blind spot that we're just unaware of. And it prevents us from seeing the reality of how we're showing up in the world. And we can't really make any kind of lasting or impactful change in our lives without first having that awareness of what's going on in that 95% of our subconscious mind. So when we can take the mirror and shine it on ourselves, then we can start to ask really important questions like, why am I the way I am? Why do I react to my environment and circumstances in my environment the way that I do? And then what are the life traumas and distortions that cause me to react negatively or positively, and how can I better manage those reactions for my own good and for the good of others? This works obviously, to kind of circumvent the neural programming that drives those negative response patterns, but it also identifies the positive response patterns in your life as well. And that same level of awareness can shine a light on your true gifts, and that allows us to lean into the positive aspects of our being. Recognizing and understanding our positive gifts can give us confidence. It gives me confidence of how to show up more powerfully in those ways because I've acknowledged it. I recognize that these are my powers or my superpowers. So another question to ask is, what are the relationships with people in the world around me that cause me to show up in any specific way? What's causing this reactive pattern? And until you take a step back and look at it, you don't have any way to know how it's affecting you or the people around you. Ultimately, I believe that self-awareness is the cornerstone of emotional intelligence. An easy example of this is to really ask yourself, how do I show up? How do I react when someone cuts me off in traffic? Do I get super aggressive and angry, or do I just let it go and it doesn't really bother me? These types of things like getting cut off in traffic, we have zero control over it. It just happens to us. These things just happen to us. But many people allow these things that they have no control over to affect their emotional state for maybe a minute, maybe an hour, maybe days, and maybe even months, where they think back to that occurrence, and then it pulls them back into that state of anger or anxiety that they had, and they're reliving the moment over and over again. So with better self-awareness, you can start to see these areas of your life when you get triggered, and you can start to take note of these things more out of curiosity and with less judgment overall, and start to work through the reasons that you may have these reactions. What's causing that? What's caused that pattern to be laid down in the first place? And sometimes just the awareness alone can allow a recognition of the thought framing that's triggering the emotion. I know for myself, many times when I've allowed myself to slow down enough to get curious about the emotions that are coming up in any given moment and identify that thought pattern that's causing the emotion, I can see in real time just how ridiculous and unnecessary and destructive that thought pattern is. And because I can recognize how ridiculous it is in the moment, I can transmute it, and it no longer has power over me. It may take some reps to get there, but overall that recognition of it and recognizing that it really is kind of silly sometimes the way that I'm reacting. Another way that I get curious about this is I ask people around me what they notice about me, what they notice about how I show up to different stimulus in my environment and to different, maybe conflict in relationships and things like that. Now this takes courage. I think it would take anybody some courage to ask these questions of people around them, because the feedback that you get is maybe not easy to hear. And, like I say, the self-awareness is the cornerstone of emotional intelligence. And once you have that awareness dialed in, then you can start to really lean into learning how to actually regulate your emotions. Most people have no idea how to do this, regardless of what the circumstances are. The way to do this is to really recognize how it's coming up in the moment and to train yourself to not have these immediate reactions to emotions when they come up, to just acknowledge them and recognize that they're there. And we're not talking about, stuffing it down or ignoring the emotions. We're talking about really training yourself to be calm in the face of these emotions and to calm down before you have some reaction, so that you don't react irrationally. An amazingly simple way to regulate emotions is just with breath. Anytime you feel a strong emotion coming up, take a pause, take 3 deep breaths. The more reps you get doing this, the more you will train your nervous system to be able to go from these heightened states of emotion back down to a calm state in the moment. And I practice this at the gym sometimes, so I can do a set of whatever exercise, and then I set my timer on my phone for 90 seconds. So I get myself into this heightened state through the exercise, and then I take 90 seconds and I just take deep calming breaths between the sets. It calms my nervous system down. This is training my nervous system, getting in those reps of going from heightened emotional states back to calm. And over time, that really trains my nervous system how to do that. So then when the real stressors that I encounter from the world come up, then I'm able to regulate immediately. Because most of those stressors that we encounter, it's really because the world is not what we want it to be. It's not meeting our expectations of what we believe we should be receiving in that moment. But we can't change everyone around us to suit our own emotional reactive resonance. So a healthy approach to this is to change ourselves and do the work on ourselves by building this skill of emotional intelligence so that we can better navigate the people and circumstances in our reality. I view emotional intelligence and my emotional responses as probably the most massive opportunity for personal growth that I have. And I think when I do this, I find that my ability to change these emotional patterns changes my entire perspective on life. And it's not a perfect process for sure. It takes practice, and I get tons of learning opportunities along the way. So the more I work on this, the more people around me notice the difference in how I show up and my ability to diffuse the tension in relationships, conflict, or situations over time. I think my friends, my family, coworkers have become less afraid to interact with me and are even more drawn to me because they see that I don't blow up on people or judge them. They trust that. And this is essentially really how I magnetize more of the people around me that are resonating at the same level and playing at this level of emotional intelligence. I want more of that in my life.